Hello everyone. I'm doing several things today. One of the first things I need to do is give my bags of grain spawn that I made with king oysters on, let's see, 4/19. So that was 5 days ago. You can see most of the bags are already well colonized. I have a couple that are lagging behind. I must not got much culture in there. You can see they're all about 50–60% colonized, and that's a good time to mix it up. And I definitely recommend mixing your grain spawn up at least once. Really, one time mixing is all you should really need. Yeah, I just see it's just barely starting out on these ones, so I'll go ahead and give these ones that are lagging behind probably another 2 or 3 days before I see some patchy growth. You want to at least wait till you get a little bit of patchy growth in it to mix it up. But mixing it up is going to help prevent any bacterial contamination from getting in any wet spots that you get on the bottom or whatnot. I made some test tube slants today so I can put my entoloma and Sporeworks king oyster culture into the fridge for some long-term storage. You can see I have them here cooling. One side propped up on a paper towel so it's at an angle. And each test tube just has a popsicle stick with about 1/4 inch of it cut off. I boil the popsicle sticks in the microwave for 2 minutes in a shallow dish of water to get them rehydrated. And then fill each tube up about 2/3 of the way and tighten the lids on really well. I find it best to get your hands wet and screw them on there and kind of let the lids slip in between your hands as you tighten them tightly. That way, make sure you don't over tighten or any chance of you accidentally snapping the test tube and cutting your hand. You don't want that. But as these cool, you can see that some of the popsicle stick gets exposed to the top, and then there's a well of agar in the bottom of it. And let me show you what those turn out when you inoculate them. See, I have some old ones here. A lot of these I've had for 2 or 3 years and probably no good. Like here's an old king oyster one that I made. You can see where I've taken transfers from it a bunch of times. Here's my old Hericium americana lion's mane culture. And of course, I'm storing them in a regular refrigerator in the door. And so I'm not getting, the best temperature storage. You really want all the way down to 33, 34 degrees. There's an old pink oyster culture. And then the longer you store these in your fridge, you'll see too, like here's a king oyster slant that I made. You can see it's pretty much filled up with mycelium. It's actually up through the cap and breaking out underneath the wax. And you can still use it like that if it gets like that, but that shows you that they still grow in the refrigerator over a long amount of time, but yeah, they still grow. You can actually see about a 1/2 inch down into the agar. It's got about 1 inch left of agar they could grow into. So yeah, plenty of food. And then sometimes I've had these slants, like this one came from Aloha Medicinals, and it's Hericium arbitus, which I couldn't seem to get a clean transfer from, but you can see actually some mushroom growing in the dish, or in the slant rather. And when you do slants, don't use these little cheap plastic test tubes, unless you know you're doing a huge library of strains like low-hall medicinals. Get you a set of nice fat test tubes. Fatter the better, so you have more room to get your scalpel in there. So I'll let these cool down over here, and then we'll do some transfers. You can see I have this new rack. This is actually a cookie cooling rack that comes in a set of 3 and has folding legs, and you can stack them. And thanks to Captain Insano for giving me that kind of tip. But now I'll have plenty of room underneath if I need to slide anything underneath the shelf. And everything I work on the top of the shelf is going to get a nice direct flow of clean air. See my second transfer of king oyster. Looks really nice. And here's another dish of the original culture. Very clean. I'll probably use this one to do the slant since it's fresher, has less expansion. And these 2 entolomas you can see where I took the culture from still look pretty clean. And then all my entoloma transfers. It's very strange mycelium. It's like it doesn't expand radially like the king oyster. It seems to go out and travel around the place, you know, if that is indeed entoloma mycelium. I mean, I can see the filaments of mycelium, so I know it is definitely a mushroom culture. And you can see as it grows, or as it matures, it starts to get that white mycelium color to it. But you know, the only way to really find out is to, you know, to try to grow some and see if that's actually what it is. But I'm going to take a little bit from one of these onto a couple slants, and then a little bit from these 2 on a couple slants. See, I have 2 different colors of caps. That'll make it easier to keep organized. I'm going to save these dishes too and rewrap them. Well, actually I don't even really need to rewrap them, because here in a minute I'm going to use some of this king oyster culture and maybe even some entoloma culture to inoculate some larger liquid cultures I have in half-gallon jars. Got a little bit of and the first thing I'm going to do is loosen the cap a little bit on these, because I've tightened it so tight. You want to just loosen it, don't unscrew it, just enough so that when you work on it, you're not going to have to squeeze hard with a scalpel in one hand. You might hear a little bit of puff of air in the vacuum. You can see this one rolled off my paper towel halfway. I had to reset it, but it's a little bit sloppy on the inside, but it'll still work. hand up. Clean my scalpel. Now, since you know your culture is clean, you can take a larger chunk of it to inoculate your slant so it grows through it a little bit faster. It's especially important to sterilize about a couple inches down from the tip of your scalpel when you're doing your slants, because you're going to be sticking your scalpel inside the test tube a little bit. It's especially more important when you're taking a transfer from the slant onto a dish, because then you might have to finagle a little bit to get that chunk off, the chunk on the scalpel. I'm going to go ahead and cool my scalpel on the on some of the uncolonized portion. Then from the edge, I'll take a nice chunk. See there's a nice chunk. Now here's where it takes a little bit of practice. You want to keep the chunk towards your flow hood. With one hand, you grab the cap and then you unscrew it with the other. Get it to the point where your popsicle stick is facing away from you. And then really... Oh, I see I kind of screwed up there because this first slant I've done in a while. I got it inside the tube, but in the process I've accidentally touched the outside of the tube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit that there for a little bit of a second. I'm going to go ahead and re-sterilize just a little bit. Anytime you accidentally touch your scalpel to say like the outside edge up to the rim of your Petri dish, any places that's not quite where it should be, you always want to re-sterilize it. There. And then cap it off. I'll do the next one a bit better. You can see right there is the chunk. And don't hard tighten it at the moment, because you're going to come back and wrap it with parafilm. Get that scalpel sizzling hot. Cool down a bit. I'll take another chunk. Taking the same rhombus cut. Now see, because this chunk was large enough, I was able to stab it. Alright, this one's going to go better. Screw it. See a little bit of agar hanging out the lip of that too. That's alright. Just make sure it stays on the inside of the lip. Set this out of the way. Let's see, I have to admit, it's like this entoloma mycelium still has a wet look to it. I don't trust that this is actually perfect mycelium instead of a mold mycelium or a yeast or something weird like that. But again, it's like, since no one's ever done this that I know of, the only way to see that if my culture is what it's supposed to be is to try to grow it. And I think next year, when I find some of these fresh abortive entolomas, I'll clone some of the fresh fruits, and then I'll definitely know what the mycelium looks like. Might be a bit difficult to clone a wild specimen like that, but we're gonna find out.